Citroen's Berlingo van remains one of the market's best-selling compact LCVs and has been rejuvenated in this third-generation form. You get clever technology that aims to set a fresh commercial segment benchmark in this class, plus there's a more efficient Blue HDI diesel engine range and the option of petrol power too. The larger of the two body shapes now gets a longer wheelbase for extra space, and you'll appreciate the clever cabin configurability. Potentially then, there's lots to like here.
Think of a compact but spacious van, and it's really quite likely that you'll find yourself considering this one, Citroen's Berlingo. It is, after all, the model that most people think of when considering this category. Here's the improved and much more sophisticated third-generation version. Like its predecessors, it's the kind of van that you buy if your business needs a compact LCV that isn't quite as small as a modern cityvan-sector model would be, something like Citroen's own Nemo. Vehicles like that are based on superminis. Berlingo-type models, in contrast, sit on the more spacious platforms that were originally developed for family hatchbacks or small MPVs. Now, the platform in question in this Mark III Berlingo is the PSA Group's modern EMP2 chassis, which also now underpins two of this model's closest segment competitors, Peugeot's Partner and Vauxhall's Combo. These are both rivals that also share this Berlingo's engine range and much of its design technology. It's Citroen, though, that has the most heritage in this sector. This was the first brand to introduce a diesel-powered LCV, the first to launch a van with an integrated load area, and the first to launch an LCV model with 3 seats in the cabin. Compact vans of this kind from this French brand go all the way back to the C4 fourgon model of 1928, which was succeeded in 1951 by arguably the most iconic small LCV of all time, the 2CV van, the world's first mass-produced front-wheel drive commercial vehicle. Nearly 1.25 million examples of that were sold over 27 years of production. And although successive models, the Arcadian of 1978 and the C15 of 1984, sold quite well, they never attracted quite the same kind of following. The Berlingo model line, though, has, with 1.5 million sales to date, although it's hard to imagine examples of this ever becoming collector's items in the way that the 2CV van now is. The Berlingo nameplate first arrived in the LCV sector in '96, with the second generation version launched in 2008 and then updated in 2015. Building on this strong heritage, this Mark III Berlingo van, launched in late 2018, marks a thorough renewal of this bestseller. There's a new 1.5-litre Blue HDI diesel engine, the fresh option of PureTech petrol power, and the availability of a slick-shifting new EAT8 auto gearbox, which will suit urban-based users. The stiffer platform has been paired with electric power steering, and new technology includes a clever onboard weighing system and a surround rear vision camera. Plus, as before, there are a couple of body lengths and 2 or 3 seat options. Would it all be enough, though, to re-establish the Berlingo van in this important LCV segment? Time to find out. Citroen products, be they car or van based, have always been associated with comfort. It's a particular selling point that the brand wants to re-emphasise with all its modern era vehicles, hence its current so-called advanced comfort development ethos, which especially focuses on seat support and suspension feel. Now, even if you didn't know that, you might feel it right from the off in this Berlingo van. The driver's seat, particularly the upgraded comfort spec one that we're trying here, cushions you far more effectively than the utilitarian chairs which are usually offered in models in this segment. And Citroen's damping know-how comes across in the way that potholes and speed humps trouble this LCV a lot less than you expect them to. Vans like this are usually defined by a very firm standard of ride, courtesy of the stiff damping needed for heavy loads. Here, though, it's a bit different, and for us, the suppler springing of this Berlingo with its endearing strolling motion is one of the very best things about it. This is helped by the installation of car-derived underpinnings, which at the front end feature the EMP2 platform that PSA Group brands all use for their mid-sized models. This stiffer chassis helps to make this Citroen slightly more agile around the bends, but it still isn't the sharpest commercial van in the class to drive, which of course will matter not one jot to most lightly operators. They'll want to know about engines, so let's cover those now. It's probable that this will be the last Citroen compact van with a power plant lineup based primarily around diesel power. The brand provides its usual choice of Blue HDI options with a new slightly smaller 1.5 litre unit which has been developed for this model, offering either 75, 100 or, as in this case, 130 horsepower. The base Blue HDI 75 variant is a distinctly leisurely thing, taking nearly 16 seconds to get to 62 from rest on the way to just 94 miles an hour, and that helps to explain why almost all customers opt for one of the two perkier Berlingo diesel models, possibly the 100 horsepower version, which makes 62 in just under 13 seconds on the way to a top speed of just over 100 miles an hour. At the top of the range, the punchy 130 horsepower engine that we're trying here is the only diesel unit mated to a manual gearbox with 6 speeds rather than 5, and it's the power plant to choose if you plan on doing any towing, or if you just like a van that makes mincemeat of typical overtaking manoeuvres on the highway. The 300 Nm torque output offers a plump wave of pulling power, which allows the manual version to tow along up to 1.2 tons, and it surges really nicely through the gears. It gets to 62 miles an hour in around 10 seconds on the way to a somewhat modest top speed of 115 miles an hour. Still, this vehicle does have quite a bit of frontal area to present to the airstream. Now, we should additionally mention that Blue HDI 130 buyers get the alternative of Citroen's new and much improved auto gearbox. This self-shifter, badged EAT8, is now a proper torque converter setup with 8 ratios. The old EAT6 auto transmission that you got in some versions of the previous generation design was merely a robotized version of a 6-speed manual. We think the EAT8 option might be a good one for owner-driver urban operators who want, well, just one less thing to worry about as they dodge between trucks and traffic lights. To suit the current zeitgeist, Citroen's once again offering petrol power to Berlingo van buyers, and much more credibly than it's done in the past. Instead of the feeble, thirsty old 1.6 litre VTI unit fitted to earlier versions of the previous Mark II model, there's now the PSA Group's excellent 3-cylinder 1.2 litre PureTech turbo unit. Now, most buyers will opt for this power plant in 110 horsepower form, where it's mated to a 6-speed manual gearbox, and it makes 62 miles an hour from rest in around 12 seconds on the way to a maximum of nearly 110 miles an hour. Pulling power is strong even from low revs, and there's plenty of punch in the mid-range, although there's little point in revving it out. The other petrol alternative is a 130 horsepower version of that engine, but if you go for that, you have to have it with the EAT8 auto gearbox. Other things to note, well, Citroen's never been especially good at making sweet shifting manual gearboxes, and it still isn't. The stick doesn't like to be hurried through the gate, and a rather long throw exists between ratios. More importantly though, town driving in this Mark III Berlingo can be much easier than it was before, and not only because of the large door mirrors or the more sophisticated electric power steering that you get this time around. Now, that does facilitate a relatively tight 10.8 metre turning circle. It's all down to a feature added to this third generation model that we really like, the surround rear vision system. It's optional on most models, and it's not especially cheap, but if you can negotiate it into your purchase package, we think you'll be doing yourself a big favour. The setup's based around a 5-inch colour screen positioned where a rear view mirror would normally be, and at first you think it's just a rear view camera. It can function that way, but it's mainly intended to deal with 2 key safety issues for van users: the normal absence in an LCV of a rear view mirror, and the almost total lack of over the left shoulder vision that you usually have in a van when you're coming out of less acutely angled junctions or parking spaces and you need to see whether there's traffic approaching from the left. A camera over the top of the rear doors deals with the first problem and gives you so-called rear view monitoring, and that's a permanent picture of what's behind when you're on the move. And for when you're manoeuvring or trying to safely negotiate your way into the flow of traffic, another camera at the base of the passenger side door deals with a second issue to provide a side passenger view, which you can get by pushing a button at the end of the indicator stalk here. The other key optional addition that's offered to Berlingo van buyers this time around is something that we've been asking van makers to provide for years, an overload indicator. No longer is it necessary to just guess whether the weight you're carrying out back exceeds the vehicle's permitted payload. A small screen located in the cargo area will tell you exactly, measuring load weight automatically when the engine is started, or at any time that you wish if you press the buttons below the monitor. That minimises the risk of premature tyre wear or tyre blowouts, and it's part of a safety-first approach that this Mark III model further prioritises with the availability of a whole raft of optional camera-driven safety kit that not so long ago would have been totally foreign to vans in this segment. Autonomous braking, lane departure warning, blind spot monitoring, adaptive cruise control, auto-dipping headlights, driver fatigue monitoring. It's all now there if you're prepared to pay for it. Something a bit more basic has been taken care of this time around too, refinement. It wasn't that the engines in the previous generation model were particularly over loud. The issue instead was that in the previous version of this van, Citroen wasn't prepared to standardise a full height bulkhead, so noises from the cargo bay constantly reverberated around in the cab area. This time around, all models get proper full height separation between the cab and the cargo area, which makes a huge difference, especially on longer trips. The top spec driver version that we're trying here also gets a pack of additional acoustic insulation and thicker glass to improve refinement. It's a pity that Citroen couldn't have standardised that across the range. Operators needing to deliver on slippery building sites or requiring continued mobility throughout the coldest winter snap may want to look at equipping their Berlingo with Citroen's Worksite Pack, which is standard on the worker spec models and optional with mid-range enterprise trim. Now this gives you increased ground clearance, extra underbody protection and more tractable Michelin mud and snow tyres, but the main inclusion is the brand's grip control system. Now it's only based around improving front wheel traction, but it's very effective in the way that it works with the standard ESP stability control system to brake a wildly spinning front wheel and transfer torque to the tyre with the most traction. Control of this setup is via a rotary knob down by the gear stick, which offers dedicated modes to deal with either snow, mud or sand, or indeed to turn all the electronics off completely, as you might want to do if, for example, you're braking on gravel or slush, when locked up wheels can actually build up a little buffer in front of them to help you stop. There's even an incorporated hill descent control system for easing you down slippery slopes. This is all enough to enable negotiation of some surprisingly sticky situations. Sticky situations for most typical Berlingo buyers, though, are likely to be confined to late deliveries and impossible deadlines, all of which will be slightly easier to cope with in this quieter, better connected and more comfortable Mark III model. Inspired by Pro is the marketing strapline here. Whatever the inspiration comes from in this case, there's no doubt that it's created a markedly better product. You expect a bit more when it comes to the look of a Citroen van. This, after all, was the brand that brought us compact commercial style icons like the C-Force fourgon of the 30s and the characterful post-war 2CV van. Back in the 90s, the first generation version Berlingo had a bit of sass too, but it rather lost that in its more generic Mark II guise. This third representative of the Berlingo model line is much more satisfyingly styled, with a look that's a little more expressive and distinctively Citroen than before. This time around, the front end differs significantly from that of the alternative Berlingo passenger car design. The headlights on this LCV model are incorporated into the two-tier front lighting signature rather than being separated out from it below. That's so as to confirm this model's kinship with the brand's mid-sized dispatch van. As with that vehicle, there is a short, high bonnet for a really commanding view of the road ahead. And lower down, the neater bumper and radiator design has been created to sit lower and wider as part of a look that Citroen hopes will underline the robust strength of this vehicle. Not too much has changed at the rear. The vertically stacked tail lights have been restyled and the Berlingo badge has been added to the left-hand door. Plus, this van can be specified with this high-set rear camera attachment, but more on that in a minute. Under the skin, this model, like its Peugeot partner and Vauxhall Combo design stablemates, uses the latest version of the PSA Group's stiff and strong EMP2 platform, although only at the front. The rear part of the chassis has been carried over from the previous generation design, because the development team felt that the carriage capacity and payload benefits that structure offered couldn't be improved on. As before, there's still no high roof option, and as ever, there are two Berlingo body shapes to consider. Now, this standard 4.4 metre long M version is much the same size as its predecessor model, but with the lengthier body style, things have changed a bit. Now, previously, Citroen created lengthier Berlingo versions simply by sticking a bit of extra metalwork behind the rear axle. This time around, though, the job's finally been done properly. The longer XL model sits on its own distinct, lengthier wheelbase, hence a 4.75 metre total length, which makes that extended variant 102 millimetres longer than the old L2 body shape in the previous generation range. And that's why the Berlingo XL model's cargo bay offers 3.9 cubic metres of capacity, and that's 0.2 cubic metres more than was offered by the old L2. There is another way, though, that you can achieve a carriage capacity figure knocking on the door of 4 cubic metres, yet still stick to this more affordable M body shape. Avoid entry-level trim, your Berlingo will come with an improved version of what the brand calls its Extenso modular folding passenger bench. And that's a configuration which allows the outer passenger seat to be folded flat so that longer items can be poked through from the cargo area. With this feature in place and in use, load capacity increases by 0.5 of a cubic metre, hence the way that this M-body style can offer XL standards of carriage space. Now, another way of using the Extenso layout is to raise the seat base here vertically against the seat back so tall items can be carried, or maybe fragile things that you don't want to consign to the loading bay. The other benefit of the Extenso package is that it includes this useful middle seat, so a third passenger can be accommodated if necessary. Now, we really don't understand why some journalists criticise this feature. Yes, the proximity of the centrally dash-mounted gear lever does make it difficult for an adult to comfortably use that berth, but it's only there for short journeys and emergency situations anyway. In any case, it's not only adults who travel in vans. Real-world Berlingo users tend to find that central berth is very useful for occasions when, well, for instance, it's necessary to drop the kids off on the way to work. Other benefits offered by this middle seat arrangement are found in terms of cabin practicality. Beneath it, there's a useful stowage compartment that can keep valuables away from prying eyes. Flatten the backrest, and there's a handy desk surface revealed. And this time around, that includes a neat pivoting writing table that makes it much easier to use a laptop or to scribble on delivery notes. It's features like these that'll make this van an easier proposition if you're needing the kind of mobile office functionality that many owner-drivers now seem to want. All right, let's take a seat at the wheel and check out what Citroen's done in creating this completely redesigned cabin. It now features a more horizontally orientated architecture, and there are smarter materials on the dashboard, the centre console and on the doors. The seats are more nicely upholstered and inviting too, and if you avoid entry-level trim, then the driver's chair will be 6-way adjustable with height and lumbar support. In this top driver variant, it features an especially supportive comfort spec structure which incorporates Citroen's latest advanced comfort seat design. The brand has also allowed for the inclusion of a few elements of optional technology that you simply, wouldn't expect to find in a compact and relatively affordable van. There's a head-up display available, for example, which we don't have here. And here's another surprisingly sophisticated optional feature, the surround rear vision screen. And that's a 5-inch monitor that sits where a rear view mirror would normally be. Now, as well as functioning as a reversing camera, this can show you the passenger side of the vehicle and offer rear view monitoring. So basically permanent rear vision at speed, just like you get from an ordinary rear view mirror. Neat. Talking of screens, a major aspect of this Berlingo's cabin redesign has been the installation of this much more advanced centre dash monitor. This is 8 inches in size, an inch bigger than before, and it now sits high and proud on top of the fascia. There's the usual DAB audio, informational functions and optional navigation functions, of course, but it can do a lot more than that. Make full use of this display and you really will be able to take quite a lot of your company's office functionality out on the road with you. Specified correctly, this screen can create in the van a Wi-Fi hotspot and provide you with an internet browser. There's also standard Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring, as well as usual Bluetooth phone linking. And owners can use a Citroen Connect apps package, which will open up access to a whole range of informational features. With these in place, your Berlingo will be able to do things like warn you of traffic jams, locate a fuel station, or find you a car park, or locate you somewhere to eat. There are also apps that will allow you to check the weather, even search for a trader via a yellow pages function. What we're glad this screen doesn't do, though, is operate the ventilation controls. The climate and ventilation buttons, thankfully, remain separate, located further down the centre stack here. On to cabin practicality. If you were to add up the capacity of all the different nooks and crannies available within the cab of this Berlingo, you'd arrive at a figure of 113 litres. Perhaps the cleverest element is this top box glove compartment. That's vastly increased in size by virtue of the fact that the front passenger airbag that would normally restrict that stowage area's size has been moved up into the ceiling. Now, this glove box incorporates a USB port and an aux-in socket. It's a pity, though, that it can't be cooled for the storage of things like cans of drink and chocolate. Now, unfortunately, this slippery, shallow, narrow, mid-level tray just below the glove box lid is pretty much useless, and we're disappointed by the way that the open storage area just below that is reduced in size on right-hand drive models by the need to accommodate a bulky fuse box. What else? Well, there are decently sized 2-part door pockets which incorporate holders that can take 1.5 litre bottles. If you avoid base trim, there's a stowage drawer beneath the driver's seat here, which slides out. We like this practical overhead shelf here. Plus, there's a useful cubby in front of the gear stick that can accommodate an optional wireless charging mat. Smaller items can be stashed behind the centre dash infotainment screen, the lower frame of which incorporates a further USB port. There's a lidded box on top of the instrument binnacle. There's a little coin holder above the electric parking brake that most models now have. And there are ticket clips on the sun visors. Cup holders, well, they're mounted at either end of the top of the dash. And on that subject, we're really not sure what this little circular indentation in the near the gear stick's for. Maybe a tiny bottle of pasties? It would be good if there was a jacket hook behind the driver's seat, but we do like the fact that a 3-pin 220-volt socket can be specified. As for other things that you might want to know, well, here's what we've found in our time with this van. It's easy to find a comfortable driving position, and that's aided by plenty of adjustment from the height adjustable seat and the restyled multifunction 3-spoke wheel. As ever, all the controls are clearly marked and fall easily to hand, especially the gear lever, which sprouts neatly into palm from the dash. The instrument dials that you view through the wheel are clear and smart, and they come separated by an informational screen that can display trip computer functions, a braking acceleration graphic and speed limit signs. The electric window switches are this time around mounted properly on the doors rather than in the middle of the fascia as they were on the previous generation model. Build quality from the Spanish factory in Vigo seems reasonable too. Most Berlingo van models sit in the £15,000 to £23,000 bracket, excluding VAT and on-the-road charges, and there's a choice of two body shapes, the standard M body style we have here and the 350mm longer XL version, which attracts an extra cost of £900 ex-VAT if you want that. Go for this lengthy version and you'll also have the option of specifying a crew van variant with a second seating row. Neither body length offers a high roof option though. You'll probably be aware that there's also a separate MPV car version of this design, although of course that's not our focus today. And at the time of this van version's launch in the autumn of 2018, Citroen was also still selling an all-electric version of the previous Mark II Berlingo LCV model. But let's stick to what we're reviewing here, a Mark III Berlingo van that almost all buyers will order in diesel form. There's a mainstream choice of 75 or 100 HP Blue HDI engines fitted with a 5-speed manual gearbox. Now, we've avoided the base 75 horsepower unit for this test, and we'd suggest that you do the same. Blue HDI 75 Berlingo has a significantly reduced payload capacity and it lacks a stop and start system, so it's slightly less economic than the preferable Blue HDI 100 power plant. If you need more diesel power or you want to try the brand's new auto self-shifter, then your dealer will point you towards this Blue HDI 130 variant, which can be had either with a 6-speed manual or for £1,150 more with the E88 automatic transmission. The rare petrol models, which use efficient 1.2-litre 3-cylinder PureTech power, come either with 110 horsepower and a 5-speed manual gearbox or with 130 horsepower and E88 automatic transmission. Now, there are 4 trim levels to choose from: X, Worker, Enterprise and Driver. Worker, which is based on X-Spec, is a bespoke specification level aimed at the construction industry. This top Driver trim level is also bespoke, and that's based on Enterprise spec, and it's aimed at company drivers who need to make longer trips or numerous deliveries in urban areas. Bear in mind that you'll have to avoid the X or Worker models if you want automatic transmission or one of the top 130 horsepower engines. And do remember that if you buy in it at the cheapest X-grade level, the standard kit tally will give you only 2 seats up front. The other specs all feature the useful Extenso modular folding passenger bench seat that allows the cab to either take up to 3 people or to accommodate longer items pushed through a flap from the cargo bay. Now, before we get into this LCV's market positioning, let's mention in passing that for the time being, Citroen isn't offering the options that were available with the previous generation lineup in terms of creating bespoke conversions of this design. So there are no platform cab derivatives this time around to suit those who need special bodywork. Nor, to begin with anyway, are Berlingo buyers being offered the various ready-to-run specialist conversions which were offered with the Mark II Berlingo and which enabled this van to be specifically equipped for things like carrying glass panels or temperature-controlled items. Onto the value proposition that Citroen's pricing delivers us here. Now, the PSA Group's policy has been to pitch this Berlingo and its similarly priced Peugeot partner and Vauxhall Combo design stablemates amongst the more expensive offerings in the segment for spacious compact vans. Rival models like the Volkswagen Caddy and the Mercedes Citan would probably end up costing around about the same if you equalised equipment levels. Other segment contenders, though, like for instance Renault's Kangoo, Fiat's Doblo Cargo and Ford's Transit Connect, could conceivably save you £1,500 to £2,000 in like-for-like form, but then you would probably expect that those are much older designs. Now, it would certainly help Citroen's cause here if standard equipment levels were to be generous, so let's take a look at that now, and let's focus to start with on the 2 core trim levels, X and Enterprise. Now, it's nice to see that even the most basic X-spec models get equipment features that you'd probably have to pay extra for with entry-level variants of rival vans in this segment, so stuff like auto headlamps, DAB radio, and the Citroen Connect box with emergency and assistance system, which will automatically alert the rescue services with your exact GPS location in the event of an accident that triggers the airbags. Other X-spec features include Bluetooth phone connectivity, electric front windows, a multifunction trip computer, powered mirrors, daytime running lights, an overhead storage shelf, USB and audio jacks, and a full-size spare wheel, plus remote central locking. This time around you get a proper full-height bulkhead too, separating the cab from the load bay. And the near side sliding side door that you get to access that area in this M model is built on in the lengthier XL body shape by a second sliding side door on the other side of the vehicle. The second core Berlingo van trim level is Enterprise. Now this specification will get you the kind of Berlingo that you're more likely to want if you're an owner-driver operator, courtesy of the inclusion of comfort-orientated items like air conditioning, rear parking sensors, and an 8-inch Connect centre dash colour infotainment touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring. Now at this level you also get that useful Extenso modular folding bench seat we mentioned earlier, with its central pivoting writing table and its load-through flaps. Other interior Enterprise features include a driver's seat with height and lumbar adjustment, an electronic parking brake, and cruise control with a speed limiter. The load bay in an Enterprise spec Berlingo gets hard plastic floor protection, plus there's also an alarm, a tyre pressure monitor, power folding heated mirrors, and front fog lights with a cornering function. So having covered the two core trim levels, let's also take a look at the two bespoke specifications which Citroen has launched this time around, and they're aimed at specific industries. Now earlier we mentioned the X-spec based worker trim level, which is aimed at the construction companies. Now these Berlingo variants would be ideal for building site use because they come with a 30mm increase in ground clearance, also underbody protection, and the brand's grip control traction control system with hill descent assist and more tractable Michelin Latitude mud and snow tyres. Berlingo worker models also get the useful overload indicator, which will tell you if you've weighted the back up more than you should have done. And also at this trim level, Citroen throws in its loading pack for the cargo bay, and that gives you 4 extra mid-height load securing rings, enhanced LED lighting, a 12-volt port and a 220-volt socket. In addition, Worker Spec gives you the Extenso modular folding bench seat we just recommended, and that's along with a smattering of some of the niceties that we've also already mentioned, things like the front fog lights, the extra driver's seat adjustment, and the electronic parking brake. The other bespoke trim level is the one we're trying here, Driver Spec, which sits at the top of the range and, as we said, is aimed at company drivers who need to make longer trips or numerous deliveries in urban areas. Now with this, you get all the features I just mentioned as part of mid-range Enterprise trim, plus a few items too that'll really make Berlingo ownership a bit more pleasant. Longer journeys will be easier, courtesy of a more supportive Comfort Spec driver's seat, extra acoustic insulation, automatic wipers, and the inclusion of Connect navigation and voice control as part of the centre dash touchscreen. Manoeuvring will be easier too, thanks to front as well as rear parking sensors and a surround rear vision screen mounted where the rear view mirror would normally be. That provides tri-function rear and near side visibility via a 5-inch screen. Plus, aesthetics are sharper thanks to 16-inch starlit alloy wheels and body colour for the rear bumper, the side rubbing strips, the door handles and the mirrors. Many potential Berlingo van buyers will prefer instead, though, to order features like these separately from the options list. Now, we'd particularly recommend you look at the overload indicator and the surround rear vision screen, both of which are available across the lineup. A simpler rear view camera, which comes packaged up with parking sensors, is also on offer. With mid-range Enterprise trim, you can also add in the Worksite pack from that Worker Spec Model 2, which will give you the grip control system, the raised ground clearance, the grippier tyres, and also the underbody protection. Avoid entry-level trim, and you can also specify extra cost niceties like keyless entry and a visibility pack, which gives you the auto wipers and the Magic Wash screen cleaning feature. What else? Well, with base X trim, we'd certainly add in that Extenso modular folding passenger bench seat and the extra adjustment for the driver's chair. And buyers of X and worker variants may well want to add in air conditioning, cruise control, an alarm and the 8-inch centre dash colour touchscreen. Satellite navigation, that's a common extra that buyers want. And if you're buying an Enterprise or a driver variant, then you might also want to consider a head-up display and also possibly automatic dual zone air conditioning. Across the range, a wireless smartphone charging mat is available too. As for practical stuff, well, with X and worker variants, we'd say you really need to consider adding in the hard plastic floor protection for the loading area. Alternatively, across the range, you can specify 9mm coated wood flooring instead. Now, if you haven't got the worker spec model, then you'd probably also ideally want the cargo bay loading pack, which, just to remind you, gives you the extra mid-height load securing rings, the enhanced LED lighting and the extra electrical ports. Some buyers will want the optional bulkhead glazed window, and do remember that on this standard shaped M-body style you have to pay extra if you want an offside sliding side loading door. Glazed asymmetric rear doors are also available for the few that'll want them. You can also specify an upgraded battery and alternator with a conversion interface box, and of course you can add in a tow bar, and that's either with a standard tow ball or a mixed hook. As for aesthetics, well, unless you specify your Berlingo in flat polar white, you'll need to pay your Citroen dealer extra for your choice of colour shade. There are 2 further flat colours. We've got passion red here and 3 metallic options. On an Enterprise model, you can get the smarter appearance of this top driver variant by adding in this version's package of body-coloured features. Those are found in the optional look pack, and these 16-inch starlit alloy wheels. On to safety. Now, with the Berlingo model, and it's taken the French maker some time to get up to speed in this regard. Something as basic as ESC stability control, for example, was only standardised on Citroens of this sort as recently as 2016. And the previous generation design never offered buyers the option of side or curtain airbags. Now, if this model was going to be a credible contender going forward, the brand was very well aware that a good deal more effort was going to be needed. Hence the development of a whole range of camera-driven safety features for this third-generation model. Now, all of them are optional, but for the moment, you would expect that in this cost-conscious part of the LCV segment. Hopefully, this approach might change in the future. Now, if you are a Berlingo buyer, we think it'd be well worth your while looking at this camera-driven tech. The key stuff is in an optional safety pack. This gives you 4 things, the most important one being the company's active safety brake setup. Now, this is one of those autonomous braking systems that, as you drive at urban speeds, scans the road ahead in search of potential accident hazards. If one's detected, you'll be warned. If you don't respond, or, well, perhaps you aren't able to, the brakes will automatically be applied to decrease the severity of any resulting accident. Now, as part of this, there is a distance alert system which warns the driver if he or she is getting too close to the vehicle in front. Now, if you don't respond and a collision seems imminent, then the active safety brake functionality will automatically be activated. The safety pack also includes active lane departure warning, which works on the highway to sense if you're drifting out of your lane, and applies subtle steering to ease the car back to where it ought to be. And you get speed limit recognition, which alerts you if you go over the legal limit. Now, if you want to go further with safety provision, then your dealer will offer you the option of a Safety Plus pack, which includes all the safety pack stuff, plus 3 additional camera-driven features. Extended traffic sign recognition, pictures speed signs as you pass them and displays them on the dash. Smart beam headlights will automatically dip themselves at night in the face of oncoming traffic. And a driver attention assist system keeps an eye on your reactions for signs of drowsiness. And if necessary, it'll prompt you to to stop for a restorative coffee. The alternative drive assist pack includes all those Safety Plus pack features and adds to them an adaptive cruise control system, which will automatically keep this van a safe distance behind vehicles in front on the highway and will seamlessly slow it down if you come across a tailback. In fact, it can slow you right down to a stop and then automatically start you off again if you've got an auto gearbox model. We'll also tell you that if you ordered the surround rear vision screen we were talking about earlier, your dealer will offer you the option to have that package include a blind spot monitoring system that alerts you if you're about to pull out when there's a vehicle in your blind spot. As for other more conventional safety features, well, there's ESC stability control, the usual ABS braking system with EBD, electronic brake force distribution to make it more effective, and EBA, emergency brake assistance, to help in panic stops, which will be advertised to following motorists by automatically activating hazard warning lights. There's also hill start assist to stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions, and if you can avoid entry-level trim, you'll get tyre pressure monitoring too. Specify the optional tow bar, and you'll also get a trailer sway mitigation system. We're always disappointed on a commercial vehicle to find only a single driver's airbag fitted as standard, but unfortunately that is the case with most vans. At least with this Mark III Berlingo though, you get the option to go a lot further with the extra cost availability not only of a front passenger airbag but also of side and curtain bags. Time to focus on practicality. So as usual, let's start here at the business end. As expected, the rear doors open initially to 90 degrees. Then if you release this little catch near the door hinge to 180 degrees. This second little catch on the trailing edge of the left-hand door enables this larger door to be locked in the closed position while the opposing loading door is left open. And that's the sort of configuration you'd want in the event of a long load needing to be accommodated that would protrude from the rear of the vehicle. If the stuff you have to carry is merely heavy rather than long, you'll be pleased to find that there's a relatively low loading lip which varies between 548 and 610 mils depending on version. Right, let's take a look inside where you'll find a cargo area which is a fraction larger than that you'd get in an equivalent Ford Transit Connect and a fraction smaller than the one that you'll find in a Renault Kangoo. Obviously it's exactly the same as the one that you get in this Model 2 design stablemates, those being Peugeot's Partner and Vauxhall's Combo. Now from side to side this area is 1550 mils wide, and even in this standard M Berlingo model that's big enough to swallow a couple of smaller spec Euro pallets or one of these larger ones, and that's thanks to a useful 1229 millimeters of width between the wheel arches, payload permitting of course. On that subject, payload capacity is rated at either fractionally above or fractionally below a tonne, which is competitive with most rivals. Bear in mind though that with the base 75 horsepower diesel engine, this figure could fall to well below 700 kilos, so do bear that in mind before you penny pinch by choosing the entry-level unit. Talking of payload brings us to a fresh optional feature added into this K9 series design that we really like, the overload indicator. Now this is there to inform a Berlingo operator when the vehicle's maximum authorised payload's been exceeded, avoiding safety issues or the risk of overloading fines. Now the measurement of the load weight is triggered either automatically when the engine started or manually when the vehicle's parked by pushing the provided button in the load bay. As with most vans of this size, there's no way of loading in something as large as a Euro pallet through the side door, but it slides back to reveal a decently sized aperture that's up to 675 mils wide and up to 1270 mils high. Get inside, and with this standard M body style, you get a load space length of 1817 mils plus 1236 millimeters of interior height. Unfortunately, there's no high roof option that would enable you to increase that. Citroen says there's no point because their slightly bigger Dispatch mid-sized LCV model comes in a tall roof, short wheelbase XS form for hardly any more cash. So if you needed extra roof height from a compact Citroen LCV, you'd probably choose that one. Anyway, the result of all these stats is that as a starting point, a standard M-spec Berlingo like this one can swallow 3.3 cubic metres, which is the same as with the previous design. With its extra 350 millimetres of body length, creating a load space length of 2,167 mils, the XL version can increase that figure to 3.9 cubic metres. And that figure's actually 0.2 of a cubic metre more than the equivalent version of the old Mark II model can manage. In segment terms, you're talking of capacities fractionally more than a rival Ford Transit Connect and slightly less than a competing Renault Kangoo. Now, we mentioned those Berlingo capacity figures as a starting point because, provided you've avoided entry-level trim, your chosen version of this Citroen will come with the clever Extenso modular seating system, which will enable you to flatten this outer passenger seat into the floor and push through longer items into the cab, increasing your loading length to 3,090 mils in this M model and 3,440 mils in the XL version. As a result, total carriage capacity can be up to 3.8 cubic metres in this M model or as much as 4.4 cubic metres in the lengthened XL body style. In other words, you might not necessarily need the XL version if your requirement for the carriage of really lengthy things is only occasional. What else? Well, a few years into ownership, it's unlikely that the cargo section of your Berlingo is going to look as pristine as this one does, so it'll make sense to take steps at the outset to protect both the floor and the sides of the vehicle interior from the inevitable scrapes and scratches that come with daily use. Avoid the two base trim levels. You'll get this hard, heavy plastic covering to protect the low compartment floor with tailored plastic panels partly defending the cargo area sides here and the doors against minor scrapes. These will quickly get scratched and scuffed though unless you invest in a proper ply lining kit for more comprehensive protection. This time around, all Berlingo vans get this full height bulkhead. Previously, there was either a ladder frame protector or an optional half height bulkhead. As well as doing wonders for drivers' cab refinement, this obviously provides more protection should your load slide forward during, say, an emergency stop. Not that that should happen if you've secured your load using the 6 floor-mounted tie-down points provided in the cargo bay. Go for the optional loading pack, as we would, and you also get 4 extra mid-height load securing rings, as well as a few extras to enhance cargo bay usability. Enhanced LED lighting, a 12-volt port and a 220-volt socket. On to running costs, and let's start with the volume Blue HDI 100 power plant that most Berlingo van buyers will choose. Obviously, exact figures vary a little with individual trim variants and body lengths, but in rough terms, with that particular engine, you're looking at between 66 and 68 mpg on the combined cycle and somewhere between 109 and 112 grams per kilometre of CO2. Don't assume that the lesser 75 horsepower Blue HDI diesel unit will be more frugal though. From launch, that base engine lacked the S&S engine stop-start system, which is standard elsewhere in the lineup, so it was fractionally dirtier and less economic as a result. For the top 130 horsepower Blue HDI variants, you're looking at 64.2 mpg and 116 grams per kilometre of CO2 for a manual model, or 65.7 mpg and 113 grams per kilometre for the E88 automatic. For completion, let's also tell you that an entry-level petrol-powered 1.2 litre PureTech 110 horsepower Berlingo van manages around 50 mpg on the combined cycle and around 125 grams per kilometre of CO2. And that might give low mileage users cause to pause for thought before automatically gravitating towards a diesel. Of course, you'll have to do your bit as a driver in order to get anywhere near those published fuel figures. To help you, the screen between the instrument dials includes a graphic which shows the extent to which you're braking or accelerating, as well as readouts for current fuel consumption and also for remaining range. Plus, it'll also tell you how long the stop and start system has been functional for on any given trip. Although, come to think of it, we're not absolutely certain why you'd ever want to know that. If you have a version of this van which is fitted out with the brand's 8-inch centre dash colour touchscreen, well, much of that information will be duplicated into a useful trip computer section. And you also get a theoretically useful eco-coaching segment. Now, that includes a so-called histogram section, and that will grade your driving for acceleration, as well as for braking and for smoothness. And it awards you star ratings out of 5 for every day of the week you're in. Now, you can also opt to get some general advice driving tips, although personally we really wouldn't, because most of the provided observations seem to be absolutely blindingly obvious. Things like try to drive smoothly and accelerate moderately. What else might you need to know? Well, at some point Citroen will probably fit this third generation Berlingo out in all electric form. At the time of the launch of this Mark III model though, in late 2018, the brand was still selling an all electric version of the previous Mark II design for buyers who wanted plug-in power. If you're happy to stick with conventional combustion motoring though and go with the more modern version of this LCV, well, you can expect insurance groups to be in the same ballpark as the previous model. So you're looking at groupings between 31E and 33A for the Blue HDI 75 HP derivative, and 33E and 34E for the Blue HDI 100 variant. The Blue HDI 130 versions are rated at Group 35E, no matter which spec option you choose. Maintenance costs, including spares, repairs and servicing, are likely to be low. This Mark III model has variable service intervals dependent on usage and driving style, but the maximum intervals for the Blue HDI 75 and 100 variants are 16,000 miles or 12 months, whichever comes first, whilst the Blue HDI 130 derivative that we're trying here has a maximum interval of 25,000 miles or 12 months. Plus, there's a peace of mind of knowing that your Berlingo will be looked after by Citroen's business centre network of specialist LCV dealers. Now here you get within the hour diagnostics, a maximum 48-hour lead time for service and repair, plus a van-for-van courtesy vehicle should you want it while yours is off the road. We'd want to look at upgrading to the affordable move up to business class package that for around £300 covers scheduled servicing for 4 years or 60,000 miles, whichever comes first. This package gives you AA Citroen roadside cover for the same 4-year period, including at-home assistance, recovery, European cover and help with onward travel after a breakdown should you need it. There's also the usual 3-year, 100,000 mile warranty, including a year of Europe-wide roadside assistance. The first 2 years of that aren't subject to any mileage limits, but the third year, which is taken care of by your local dealer, is limited to 100,000 miles. There's also Europe-wide breakdown assistance included from new for the first year you own the van. Looking at the longer term, you have a 12-year guarantee against rust and 36 months cover for any paintwork defects, although that doesn't include stone chips and other wear and tear damage. Much of this sort of stuff is common to this model's two design stablemates, the Peugeot Partner and the Vauxhall Combo. Something that is unique to the Berlingo, though, is the option for fleet customers to choose from 3 different telematics packages provided for the brand by experts Free2Move Connect Fleet. Now, these provide detailed information direct to fleet managers, including mileage, operating times, fuel consumption, or real-time monitoring of service intervals and mechanical alerts. Driving analysis with customised advice for the driver and real-time location tracking are also available, assisting businesses in driving down both the costs and the risk associated with vehicle management. Citroen's extensive heritage in the compact van segment is in good hands with this third generation Berlingo, a product usefully refreshed in almost every major area. The looks and the cabin are much more modern, as is the infotainment and the safety provision. And we like the clever new tech, particularly the overload indicator and the surround rear vision system. As ever with the Berlingo, you get very class competitive payload and carriage capacity figures, which are further aided this time around by the extended length of the longer XL version. Plus, as before, there's the flexibility of the Extenso modular seating system and an unbeaten set of running costs if you opt for a Blue HDI engine. Add in a very comfortable ride and one of the widest choices of factory-built models in the class, and you have a strong business proposition. Issues are few. Pricing, that's a bit higher than we'd ideally like to have seen. Some competitors offer the useful option of the high roof body style that you can't have here. And the manual gear shift can be a bit notchy, but that's about it. It makes sense that this time around Citroen has provided trim levels aimed at specific industries, and we think potential fleet buyers will particularly like the Teletrack telematics packages tailored for this model that provide the key operational stats and real-time vehicle tracking system that your business would probably benefit from. Of course, you could always argue that pretty much everything that's on offer here is also available from this model's Peugeot partner and Vauxhall Combo design stablemates, and, well, you'd be absolutely right. But loyal Berlingo buyers reckon that this Citroen provides it with just a bit more Gallic flair, and we can certainly understand that perspective. In summary then, providing that this French maker can thoroughly communicate everything this van has to offer to business buyers, those customers should agree with us that this LCV's offering in this closely fought market segment has been rejuvenated. Quite simply, it delivers more of what really matters.